They say power is loud, that it walks into a room
Sir,
and
I
demands
never knew you
attention.
were the owner.
But that's not true. Real power sits quietly, watches, and waits. 3 nights ago, my son-in-law invited me to dinner. He thought I was just an old man in a worn-out flannel shirt. Someone harmless. Someone easy to underestimate. By the end of that night, he realized I own the company he's been running for over a year. But that wasn't the real shock. The real shock was why his family wanted me at that table in the first place. And the choice I had to make when everything they believed started to fall apart. So let me ask you something. White right pointing backhand index, what would you do if the people across from you thought they had already destroyed you? Before we get into it, drop your answer in the comments. I want to see how you think. And if you enjoy stories with real choices, real consequences, and twists you won't see coming, white right pointing backhand index, hit subscribe. You don't want to miss what's coming next. I've always believed the best way to test someone isn't in the boardroom, it's at the dinner table. My daughter, Lacey, brought home Clayton Hale 3 years ago. Smart, confident, polished. The kind of man the world tells has earned everything. But I saw something else. Ambition polished with a hint of arrogance. The kind that doesn't take no for an answer. For 22 years, I've run Colton Marsh Industries quietly, building a company worth more than most cities' annual budgets. And Clayton? He had no idea he was walking into the very empire I built. I let him think he earned his CEO seat through merit. Truth? I quietly promoted him myself, testing his instincts, his character, without him ever knowing whose shadow he walked under. Lacey thought it was sweet. I called it strategy. Clayton ran the company well for months, proving his sharp mind and confident presence. But the real test wasn't in profit margins or decisions. It was in the illusion of control. Because nothing shakes a man more than realizing the stage he dominates isn't even his. And that stage was my life, my rules. The moment that changed everything started with a simple dinner invitation. Clayton's parents were visiting, and he wanted me to meet them. My gut twisted, warning me something was off. Something about the way he hesitated, the half-beat in his tone. My instincts, honed over decades, whispered that this dinner would be more than polite conversation. Aldrich's. White tablecloths. Menus without prices. Staff who spoke like aristocracy and scanned the room with practiced scrutiny. Clayton looked impeccable, as if he stepped out of a magazine. Me? Flannel, clogs, my 2006 Tacoma waiting outside. Invisible. The contrast alone was part of the plan. Clayton didn't flinch. He greeted me warmly, unaware that every step he took was on ground I'd mapped years before. As we sat, the conversation danced around trivialities. Clayton shielded company details. His parents, subtle and calculating, studied every gesture. And then it happened. Stuart Hale placed an envelope on the table. Cream-colored, deliberate. A weapon wrapped in civility. My heart didn't race. Decades of life taught me patience is the deadliest advantage. I smiled lightly, sipped my water, and let the silence grow, letting the tension thicken like fog across the table. Inside, I knew, were pieces of a story that had been brewing for decades. History, grudges, revenge disguised as civility. And me? I was ready. Because I've learned the quietest reveal often carries the sharpest sting. Clayton, his parents, and the carefully constructed facade. They had no idea what was coming. And I intended to watch, every second, as they discovered that power isn't always loud, and control doesn't always come with a spotlight. The envelope sat between us like a silent predator, its weight heavier than the crystal glasses and polished silverware around it. Clayton's fingers twitched, almost imperceptibly, over the rim of his water glass, as if sensing the storm before the first drop fell. I kept my expression neutral, letting the calm mask the anticipation building inside me. For years, I had learned to read people like open books, how they held themselves, how a fleeting glance betrayed a thought they'd rather hide. Clayton's hesitation was a melody, subtle but undeniable. Stuart Hale's voice cut through the quiet, smooth but with an undercurrent of challenge. Colton, we've heard a lot about you. I trust our Clayton has spoken highly. It was polite, rehearsed, but I knew the rhythm of deceit when I heard it. Clayton smiled, a tight, practiced line. Of course, father. He's taught me more than anyone in the industry could. His words sounded genuine, but the flicker in his eyes betrayed an unease. I finally reached for the envelope, letting my fingers brush the cream paper, the deliberate thickness of it. I assume this is something important, I said, voice calm, almost curious, allowing the question to hang in the air. Stuart leaned back slightly, as if expecting me to fumble, to betray interest. But I didn't. I never did. I had learned the most dangerous thing a man, or a family, could underestimate: patience. Inside the envelope were documents, contracts with signatures that spanned decades, some nearly illegible with age. Clayton's eyes narrowed, scanning faster than any casual glance, his jaw tightening. Lacey leaned in slightly, sensing the tension but not understanding the undercurrents. And then I saw it, the subtle pattern, the trap hidden in the formalities. It wasn't just a gift or gesture. It was a claim, a challenge, a test disguised as civility. "What is this?" Clayton finally asked, a trace of panic threading through his tone. I let a smile creep across my face, slow, deliberate. "It's what you've been unknowingly walking under. Every move you made, every decision you thought was yours alone, guided by shadows you didn't see." My words were soft, almost a whisper, but each syllable landed like a hammer. The room shifted. Clayton leaned forward, eyes wide, suddenly realizing the quiet truth behind my every interaction. Lacey gasped, a tiny sound lost under the weight of the revelation. Stuart Hale's composure wavered for the first time, just a fraction, just enough to reveal the tension lurking beneath his polished exterior. The battle wasn't about money or company structure. It was about recognition, respect, and power quietly held for decades, masked in everyday civility. I reached across the table, placing the documents deliberately closer to Clayton. "This company," I said, letting my hand hover over the papers like a guide to the truth, "has been mine longer than you've had the right to call any corner of it your own. Every promotion, every project, every success. I allowed it, observed it, tested it." Clayton's breath caught. His polished confidence wavered, replaced with that rare, human vulnerability: fear. Lacey's hand covered her mouth, unable to hide the shock. Even Stuart Hale, who prided himself on control and composure, shifted uncomfortably. And all I could do was watch, savoring the precise timing. Years of careful orchestration led to this moment, the unveiling of a quiet power that could topple pride without a single raised voice. For a long beat, no one spoke. The silence stretched, thick and oppressive. Then, finally, Clayton broke it, his voice low, questioning, trying to reclaim some dignity. You've been testing me this whole time." He wasn't angry, he was recalibrating, trying to map the terrain of a reality he never knew existed. I nodded slightly, letting the truth settle like snow on exposed branches. "Testing, yes. Watching, always. And now, you know what it feels like to realize the stage you dominate isn't even yours." That was the moment the game truly began. Clayton Hale, ambitious, clever, and unshakable, or so he thought, was forced to confront the quiet dominion I had always wielded. It wasn't about betrayal. It wasn't about revenge. It was about revelation, the slow, calculated unveiling of truth, power, and the delicate threads that hold people together when illusions shatter. And in that silence, I knew the real test was just beginning. Because control is one thing, but respect? Respect is earned when the illusions fall apart, and Clayton would soon learn the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, the person you think is watching the game has been running it all along. CTA. If you think Clayton will rise to the challenge, or crumble under the truth, hit like and subscribe, because what happens next will leave you speechless. The room felt smaller now, every glance and gesture amplified, every breath a drumbeat counting down to confrontation. Clayton's eyes darted from the documents to me, then to Lacey, seeking some clue, some lifeline, some reassurance that he hadn't been completely blind all this time. But there was nothing to anchor him. No whispered alliances, no secret cues. I had stripped away every illusion and left only raw truth on the table. Stuart Hale's hands rested on the polished wood, knuckles white, the first crack in his armor showing. "Colton," he started, carefully, but I cut him off with a shake of my head. No interruptions. This was Clayton's moment, the revelation that had been years in the making. I had learned early in life that power spoken over someone's head doesn't resonate. It is power quietly witnessed, the slow realization of someone's invisible hand guiding events. Clayton was feeling it now, and there was no turning back. He swallowed hard. All this time? You were watching me." His voice betrayed disbelief, anger, and something deeper, admiration tangled with fear. Lacey leaned closer, reaching for his hand, but he pulled back subtly. The dynamics had shifted in an instant. The man who walked into my company with polished confidence was suddenly a student, learning lessons he never thought he needed. I let the silence stretch, letting each second press the weight of reality into him. "I didn't just watch you," I said, voice steady, deliberate. "I guided you. Every promotion, every challenge, every opportunity you thought you conquered. It was curated, designed to see how far you would go, what choices you would make under pressure. And now you see the stage, Clayton. The stage you dominate isn't yours." His jaw tightened, eyes narrowing as he processed the enormity of it. Pride, ambition, ego, all of it collided in a storm he hadn't anticipated. And for the first time, he realized that raw talent alone doesn't define success. Perception, influence, and invisible strategy often weigh more heavily than any skill set. Lacey's hand hovered uncertainly over the documents. "Dad." I didn't know. Her voice was trembling, the weight of family secrets finally pressing down. I gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. She needed to see this, to understand the intricate dance of power, respect, and control. Clayton needed to see it, too, because the lessons he would learn now could either break him or forge him into something greater. The tension in the air shifted subtly, almost imperceptibly, as Clayton's mind raced. He wasn't used to being controlled, watched, manipulated, even with kindness. He was used to commanding, leading, shaping outcomes. And yet here he was, staring at the reality that he had been performing in a play directed by someone else, someone he had never suspected. I finally leaned back, letting my eyes meet his fully. "You'll make mistakes. You'll falter. But you will also learn. That is the difference between those who lead and those who merely follow orders without seeing the strings attached." My words were calm, but their weight landed heavily, a blade disguised in silk. Clayton felt it, every syllable a reminder that control and perception were two entirely different battles. Stuart Hale shifted in his chair, the first time I had seen him unsteady. He had always believed that influence could be commanded openly, that power was demonstrated in titles and wealth. But he had never understood the quiet, unseen dominion of someone who orchestrates outcomes from the shadows. And that dominion was now fully revealed. The envelope, now slightly creased from my handling, sat between us like a witness to the truth. Clayton stared, fingers hovering, knowing he had to make a choice. Defiance or humility, pride or understanding, ego or respect. The air was thick with suspense, and I let him feel it fully. Because revelation without consequence is meaningless, and the consequence had arrived. A long, tense beat passed. Clayton exhaled sharply, a mix of frustration and reluctant awe. He looked at Lacey, then back at me, understanding at last that the real test was only beginning, and that the game of control I had been playing for years was far from over. The next morning, Clayton arrived at the office with a storm in his eyes. The calm, polished confidence he always carried was replaced by unease, a subtle tremor in his stride. Every glance from employees, every hallway whisper, seemed magnified, as if the walls themselves knew the truth he hadn't fully embraced yet. I watched from my corner office, letting him feel the shift in the air. This was his reckoning, not just with me, but with the illusion he had built around himself. He called an emergency meeting with his executive team. Papers shuffled, charts displayed, voice firm yet strained. I could see the tension under the surface, the questions unasked, the doubts unspoken. Every decision he made now carried the weight of exposure. The knowledge that the throne he had thought he earned was, in reality, lent temporarily, conditional on my unseen hand. His team noticed the change, too, and uncertainty rippled through the room. Leadership is often measured in calm, but now Clayton's authority was fractured by a truth he couldn't escape. I decided to intervene, not with words, but with presence. I arrived in the boardroom quietly, observing without announcing myself. Clayton's back stiffened at my entry, a reflexive reaction from someone who had only just begun to understand the power dynamics at play. He tried to reclaim control, presenting numbers, strategies, confident nods. But each move felt forced, the undercurrent of doubt creeping into every phrase. "Clayton," I said finally, voice neutral yet carrying the weight of decades. "Do you understand why I allowed this to happen? Why I let you believe you stood alone, when in reality, every step you took was within my watchful eye?" His gaze locked with mine, searching for an edge, a flaw, a reason to fight back. But there was nothing to exploit, only the undeniable truth of his situation. He swallowed, jaw tightening. "Yes, I see it now. But why? Why test me like this?" The words were measured, careful, but beneath them ran raw emotion. Betrayal, respect, frustration, curiosity. This wasn't just a business lesson. It was personal. He realized that in order to truly lead, he had to confront the reality that control isn't always visible, that power often resides where you least expect it. The room fell silent, except for the subtle hum of the city beyond the glass walls. Lacey appeared, standing beside him, a quiet anchor. She had watched every calculated move, every silent observation, every hidden maneuver, and now she too understood the magnitude of the revelation. The company she believed Clayton controlled was shaped, managed, and guided by a hand she hadn't yet acknowledged, mine. Clayton turned, eyes scanning the familiar office with new perspective. Every corner, every office, every protocol was a reminder that appearances are rarely the truth. Ambition alone cannot navigate the invisible forces shaping an empire. He was learning, perhaps too late, that pride is fragile, that authority without understanding is empty, and that trust, real trust, must be earned, not assumed. I stepped closer, letting him feel my presence, not as a threat but as a lesson. "This isn't about proving yourself to me, Clayton. It's about proving yourself to yourself. Decisions will come, challenges will arise, and every choice will reveal who you truly are. The empire isn't just numbers or profits, it's people, perception, and patience. You've seen the illusion, now see the reality." His hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles whitening, mind racing. He realized that the real test was just beginning, how to navigate the balance between truth and perception, pride and humility, ambition and wisdom. And for the first time, I saw a spark, a recognition that the lessons I had orchestrated were slowly sinking in, shaping him in ways no textbook or mentor could replicate. The tension was palpable, thick as fog, the quiet before a storm. And in that silence, I knew the next moves would define the final outcome, not just for Clayton, but for the company, for Lacey, and for the legacy I had spent a lifetime building. CTA. The choices Clayton makes next will shock you. Stay tuned, hit subscribe, and see who truly takes control in the final act. By the time the weekend arrived, the tension had morphed into something heavier, almost tangible. Clayton moved through the office like a man balancing on thin ice. Staff avoided his gaze. Whispers trailed him like shadows. I watched from my office, letting him wrestle with the weight of what he now knew. Every move he made carried double meaning, every word measured, every gesture deliberate. It was no longer just a game of leadership, it was a game of revelation. He called Lacey into the conference room, alone this time, his expression unreadable. I paused outside the door, listening, savoring the slow burn of discovery. "I don't understand, Lacey," he said, voice tight, eyes searching hers. "All this time, I thought I built my career, my position, and now it's..." He faltered, swallowed hard, and the words caught in his throat. Not really mine. Lacey didn't answer immediately. She studied him, her loyalty to him battling the truth she had only just begun to accept. Clayton, you were given the chance to rise on your own merits, she said carefully. But the stage you walked on, it wasn't just yours. Your success, it's real, but so is the hand guiding you. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Clayton's confidence wavered, his composure cracked. For a man who thrived on control, the revelation was both humiliating and enlightening. He understood that leadership isn't about titles or promotions, it's about seeing the unseen, navigating the invisible, and respecting the forces that shape every decision. That evening, the company held its quarterly board dinner. Employees, executives, even Clayton's parents were there. I arrived last, understated, watching him with the quiet authority of someone who had seen the entire game unfold. Clayton took his seat, head high, mask in place, but I could see the tension in the set of his shoulders, the flicker in his eyes. Midway through the dinner, I rose. Glass in hand, I addressed the room, voice steady but carrying weight. Leadership isn't earned in titles alone. It's tested in silence, in strategy, in patience. And sometimes, the person you think is in control isn't. Eyes turned to Clayton, whose jaw tightened but who remained silent, absorbing the lesson in full view of everyone. Then came the moment that would define everything. I placed a contract on the table, a simple document, yet it carried years of power and legacy. Clayton, I said, voice calm, you have the skill, the ambition, the insight. You've earned the right to continue leading, but always remember, control without understanding is fragile. Read this, sign it, and truly step into your role, fully aware of the world beneath the surface. Clayton hesitated, hands hovering over the papers. Time seemed to stretch, breaths measured, silence loud. Finally, he exhaled, signing the document with careful precision. The room erupted in quiet applause, but the weight of the moment lingered, a lesson written in ink and consequence. Later, as the guests departed, Clayton approached me. I see it now, he said quietly, eyes steady for the first time in days. You didn't test me to break me. You tested me to see if I could rise in the shadow of truth. I understand. I nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. And that, Clayton, is how real leaders are made, not in ignorance, not in illusion, but in understanding the invisible forces that guide every decision. The lesson was complete. The empire remained intact, stronger than ever, but Clayton had learned something far more valuable than business strategy. Humility, patience, and the invisible threads of power. And as I watched him leave, confident yet enlightened, I knew the game was over, and the legacy secured. Final CTA. You won't believe what happens when the truth comes out. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and watch as Clayton steps fully into the world he thought he controlled.